H. How are you this morning?
Mostly pretty good.
Well, I think it's important that probably we should acknowledge that when I asked that question, it's because you're 1 week into starting a new trial of a new
Mhm.
medication for your glioblastoma.
Yeah, so I'm a couple days into taking a medication called Glix-1. Uh, it is a new therapy they're trying. Uh, at least in the petri dish, this shows good effect in damaging the DNA of cancer cells to the point that the cancer cells will die off. They won't be able to repair themselves. Uh, so far, they've done this in the petri dish. They have given it to a batch of mice who were unfortunate enough to be given glioblastoma. And now they're giving it to humans to see how much they can give to people without making them terribly uncomfortable. So,
And how many humans have they done this with so far?
so I'm number two.
Okay.
I'm about a week behind subject number one, who
Okay.
I refer to as John, who I'm sure is a good dude. Uh, because of patient privacy and stuff like that, John and I don't actually know each other and have not met. Uh, but it is kind of funny because I get the impression we're both kind of curious how the other one is doing. So I'm like, hey, how does John feel
Understandably.
this week? And
Right.
apparently he is doing fine. So I'm a couple
And
days in
and
on the
and
medicine.
you did actually pass off a coin. You make, as a hobby, you make challenge, what are called challenge coins in the military and
Mhm.
policing community. Just show everybody the coin that you designed.
So this is the silly way I spend my free time. Um, but
That's
I
a
thought it
rat.
was well, lab rat, test
Okay.
rat.
Okay. So the Glix One trial.
Yep, you got to embrace these things when you can.
Yep.
And thanks to the magic of a chat GPT model of like, hey, what can you come up with? Relatively low effort project,
Fantastic.
which was
Fantastic.
good for smiles all around.
And so that bandage on your arm, that is the port that they are introducing this medication through.
Well, close. So what's interesting about being a test subject is they're taking all kinds of blood samples and they're taking them so frequently that it just becomes inefficient to do the normal phlebotomy stick that we're all familiar with. That they've left this indwelling catheter in me just mostly for their convenience and actually out of some compassion for me, because this is one stick instead of the 36 that the trial requires.
God, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And at one point it was like sticks every 30 minutes or something through the night, which does nothing for your sleep. Whereas with this, I can actually, I was staying asleep while someone would wander over with a syringe and tap off some blood and carry on.
So you spent a couple of nights in the hospital while they started this trial with you.
Yeah, so they're trying to track what the medicine does to people. So the strategy they're using is a lot of blood work, just to make sure. Um, I have complete confidence my liver is fine. It has very few people have had their livers uh, interrogated as closely as mine has been.
Okay.
Like, no, you can keep drinking. Your liver's fine. I was like, oh, okay, good.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Usually, this is the way they give people medicine. In fact, it caused a little confusion that I was in there. I was like, no, you don't. I just need my pills, and I'll take my chemotherapy that way. They're
Yep.
like, oh, we're not hooking you up to a pump or anything. It's like, no, this is just to make it easier for everybody. That I'm not saying ouch when you're taking blood out of me. Although, funny aside, you can't exactly walk out of the hospital with things dangling out of your arm without people asking you, are you sure you're supposed to be leaving? I was like, "Yes, no, it can stay. We're gonna call your nurse." It's like, "My nurse was the one who said goodbye. I assure you I can leave." Um,
And by the 30th stick, your uh, um, mood would be less than optimal.
I there are a lot of things in my life right now that are testing my people skills, and it's just kinda like, "Okay, let's remember to go with the glass half full approach to things."
You know, that leads us very conveniently to what where we left off in our second episode was that you had just gone into surgery, and it was a somewhat emergent surgery, insofar as they had discovered the glioblastoma, and you had uh, two not great options. One of which was to do nothing, which really wasn't an option, but it was. And you have this glioblastoma is in the back of your head, and
Mhm.
so reasonably easily accessible, as long as you've got some hammers and chisels and saws and all the tools that they have to get in there. Um, or you go in and you scoop this out. You just you described it last time as being scooped out with a melon scooper. I'm hoping it wasn't quite that um,
I'm
blunt,
not sure
but
it's too much more sophisticated than that.
and you know you wake up and what's the feeling? What is that feeling?
Uh, so I had it easier than anybody else involved, because I have lost time. You go in the morning for surgery, you walk in, NYU Langone is a high performing organization that they have systems and process in place very nicely. They appreciate that everybody is anxious about the idea of having any kind of surgery, much less having brain surgery. And they have gentle handling down to a science, and it does come down to some of the little things like, here is your warm blanket. What do you need? Uh, Very much enjoyed the anesthesiologist who's like, "How you doing?" I was like, "Well, sir, I'm terrified. So if you can put me to sleep as quickly as you can, I will appreciate it."
Yep.
Uh, and he accommodated me. He said, "Dude, no problem. Hang on."
Talk about terrified, because you've been in a lot of high stress situations throughout your career, throughout life. What and you've joked about how those are mostly other people's problems, but I mean you're involving yourself in those problems, so you take on some of their stress of what's going on. But tell me about terrified.
Um, oh, well, I'm in the in between of knowing a little too much to be able to ignore the reality of it.
Yep.
Um, there's a little bit of recency bias that you're like, "Oh, they do this all the time. It will be fine." That is easy to overlook. They do this all the time and with more frequency than anybody is comfortable talking about. It is not fun. Medical mishap is a thing. Uh, and as I'm going down the list, it's like, wow, I really hope they don't give me a brain infection when they open up my head and are doing stuff. Um, and then there's very little routine anesthesia. As soon as they're giving you drugs that are lethal, but they're gonna
Yeah.
put you on a machine to take care of it. It's like as soon as they paralyze you that you're not breathing anymore, you are completely dependent on everything working as planned. Uh, it's not a great idea to spend too much time thinking about that because, I'm very good at writing out scenarios that there's nothing I can do about. It's just like, "Okay, this is beyond my control." It y I would not there is no way in the world you would ever talk me into having this surgery voluntarily. I am not an advocate for any sort of elective surgeries unless there's a compelling reason for them because it's all risk benefit. Just the risk of not doing stuff is so stark. that's a very short decision discussion. And then you're just laying there on the table going like, okay, look around, hug and kiss your loved ones because unfortunately there's a more than zero chance of, who I may go to sleep and I may not wake up. Now, fortunately, I probably will not realize any of that is happening. Or I might wake up and realize I'm awake and realize something's really, really wrong.
Mm.
And that's going to suck. So, yeah. Um,
So
and like,
terrified.
I'm terrified. And like literally a little bit of box breathing laying there on the table. Okay, let's pull all the tricks, pull out all the tools and the tricks for like, okay, uh, let's not, let's not make this a reality by wishing it into existence. It's like, okay, stay calm. Uh, this is the best possible of a circumstance I don't want to be in. This is the best possible scenario for it. That like these people do know what they're doing.
What what advice would you have for people going into that situation? Because I mean, part of what we want to talk about
Yeah.
is a benefit to other people. How would you advise somebody who's done that?
Um, Acknowledge the reality. I mean, I am trying to be sort of light about talking about being terrified, but oh my God, scared.
Mm.
Uh, I do not enjoy being in circumstances where I have less control rather than more. This comes up all the time for people though. Uh, Literally in my professional life though, like we actively practiced the uh the physical tricks to manage panic and stress. We would teach ourselves and our teammates like, okay, uh, let's do the box breathing. Everything. I imagine many people have already heard of all this stuff. The yoga breathing and whatever it is. And really, all it is like do something with some mindfulness that you're not having the flight of thought anymore, and just thinking about, oh, I can feel the air coming through through my nose as I inhale might be enough to uh, break the panic cycle that's building. Uh, I was lucky enough that practicing that kind of stuff was part of my exercise routine. Just like uh, doing deep breathing exercises. Have I talked to you about my cold plunge?
I've seen your cold plunge.
Yeah, so I'm one of these
I think it's
lunatics.
slightly crazy, but okay.
Well, so
I have a hot tub. I like that.
I also like the
That's
hot tub. I
my
have to
go-to.
admit.
Yeah.
Um, But where it pertains to this is, I have a tub in my backyard that's hooked up to a chiller that stays at about 44 degrees. Uh, Now, one of the great joys in life is getting out of 44-degree water. You feel
Yeah.
fantastic when you get out.
Yeah.
It's over.
Hmm.
It's fantastic. But where it pertains to this is, I actually found this part of my professional training that like, okay, if you climb into 40 something degree water, you feel panic. Like physiologically, your body is like something is wrong and you feel panic. And you start breathing too quickly and you gasp and all those things. And I found this is a great practice of, oh, okay, I'm going to intentionally experience some panic every day when I get in this thing in the morning after my coffee and just practice. Okay, be calm. You're not dying. This sensation will go away in a moment. And even better, you're gonna get out in a moment. You feel great. Um, and it's a little bit of a joke that, given the choice, uh, anyone who worked in an industry that they had to deal with crisis, this would be part of the curriculum learning to do their job is, okay, we're throwing you in the ice water pretty regularly, so you get used to being calm. Um, uh,
I'm not sure I don't know that that has much application for most people in terms of if as they're facing this surgery. But I do think that it's interesting that as a practice in SWAT, in
Oh, yeah.
high kinetic jobs, that you are actively practicing these same techniques that you might be described as sort of touchy-feely and,
Oh, yeah.
whatever you want to discuss.
To be honest, I expect a lot of your drivers are doing stuff like that. All these little
Mm,
rituals people have for calming and centering are basically variations on the theme of like,
yeah,
"Hey, I can feel my heart beating too fast, I'm breathing too fast, I'm having trouble focusing." All of the athletes who have their pre-event rituals, you see them doing their little dance or they're reciting a mantra or something like that. They're of a theme
yeah.
of, "Hey, I do this enough when I am calm that this lets me access the calm." Um, so, telling someone to take 4 deep breaths, that's kinda useless. Telling someone, "Hey, make a practice of taking 4 deep breaths when you're feeling good in your life a lot. So when you take those deep breaths when you need to, suddenly that's your ramp to get to that place that you feel okay." And literally, I'm laying there on the table starting to spin, and I'm like, "Okay, I recognize this feeling. It's a feeling, it's not a threat." It doesn't help that we're wired that anything that feels wrong in the body immediately goes in the threat category, and you get the wrong feedback. And it's like, no, no, th- this isn't going to last long. In a moment, I'll be fine. Just like let's let's not suddenly get to the place that I'm difficult for them to do their job. Uh, and what's interesting is now when I have moments that my symptoms flare and something's not going well, I end up going to that toolbox pretty frequently to just be like, okay, this isn't cool, but this is not as much of a problem as you might think.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, let's take the time out. Let's control the things I can control. Frequently it's just like I'm getting overstimulated by noise or visual clutter or inputs. And it's like, okay, I can't handle this much at the same time right now. And it's like, okay, let's just turn the volume down on everything. Um, so yeah,
You know, I don't know that this matches this, but and by the way, for context for people, I'm involved in motor racing.
mhm.
I have been involved in organizing and officiating racing for a long time, and you're referencing the drivers doing that. Well, my first job in racing was for Emerson Fittipaldi, and he had a pre-race ritual that required 20 minutes of him in a quiet place, accessing, as you say, that quiet, calm spot, so that when he went out and did the first lap at the Indy 500, which involves, turn one, lap one is you're headed towards a concrete wall going
Pretty fast.
220 miles an hour. Yeah. And so you need to be able to access that calm spot. And he had a ritual for that. He did have that. It was a breathing ritual and a visualization ritual and so on and so forth. So I think what you're talking about is great context for people and great advice. I don't know about the cold plunge.
The cold plunge is a commitment.
Yeah, okay. But most people can breathe. I mean,
Right, right.
that's something we all do, but doing it intentionally is a great advice. My only point of reference is that, I'm old enough to have done the colonoscopy and so on and so forth, where they do knock you out. And that in and of itself is terrifying. What I can't quite access, and I think it's incredibly valuable that you talk about this, is that not only are they knocking you out, in this case, they're also paralyzing you. So you're going to be doing a lot of breathing through a breathing machine. Um, but in addition to that, the, the melon scooper is going into your brain, and that waking up process of not knowing, am I going to be all there is real. What,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you woke up, you had some, and by the way, you talk about time standing still for you once that anesthesiology goes in. We should say it did not for Elizabeth, your wife, or Peter, your brother, who was there with her in New York when that was happening. I actually talked to them. They were at a restaurant, sort of having lunch while you were in the middle of this, being as uh, optimistic as they possibly could, not knowing having the same concerns you did, except that they had to live with them for about 8 hours while this was going on. Waking up, what was that like? What was that? Was there relief? Was there weight? Because there were some things that were going on post surgery.
Yeah, so, uh, fortunately, my first surgery was complication free. My second one was not. So, that'll be a more interesting story. That will be a different story. But waking up from the first surgery, uh, it's very much just like being woken up from a confused nap and, being disoriented and kinda like, "Oh, okay, I do recognize this. I'm in a hospital bed, and I seem to be on elevators and being wheeled around and getting settled into a room." Um, and a lot of people coaching me like, "Hey, you don't need to help, you know, just lay still. We have a plan for all this." Moving around. Um, I have a wonderful friend who knows that I have, a great joy of Legos, who sent me to the hospital with a Lego kit. Um, and, uh Katie actually gave me a little Lego. I can't remember if it was a Lego ambulance or a Lego lifeguard truck or something like that, but a small Lego kit targeted at about a 7-year-old, and I was like, "This is just the right speed."
Yep.
And that was basically kind of my function check after I woke up enough to be, "Okay, I can speak clearly." Um, I'm recognizing people. Interestingly enough, that was one of the first questions was, uh, they brought my family by and was testing if I could recognize them because this bit of the computer is the part that recognizes people. Uh, and they're like,
Mm.
"Okay, you seem to be recognizing people the way you should." And it's interesting because I do have some difficulty with that in general, that I'll still see people and I'll be like, "Okay, now who is this?" Now I
Yep.
have an excuse other than just being a social moron that I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have brain damage." Uh Oh, by the way, Emily, you were very graceful about that yesterday at when I saw you, and I had to ask. It's like, "Hey, can you just remind me?"
Yeah.
Um, but, it just became kinda doing the systems check. Like, okay, all the fingers still move, I'm not paralyzed on one side. Uh, and I started putting this Lego kit together. And what was kinda nice is, nothing about this illness is making me any smarter. So it's just kind of this constant like, okay, how much has this taken away? And every time I can have a tangible benchmark of, okay, yes, this is chipping away at the edges and this is taking away capacity, but we haven't gotten too close to the metal yet. Um,
Mm.
I have never whipped through a Lego kit faster in my life than trying to prove to myself that, like, okay, the gray matter still works, and I can look at the little plastic. I can look at the page, and okay, that image represents this little piece of plastic, and this is where it attaches to the other piece of plastic. It was great. Katie, thank you again for sending me to the hospital with the Lego kit. Then I had the great joy of my surgical team coming in to check on me. And as they're watching me assemble a Lego kit after they've been messing around in my head, going, "Yeah, you're probably going to be fine for a little while." Uh, it is, it's childish, but it is nice to hear affirming things from the people who've just been messing with your head. And it's like, okay, this is going in the right direction.
it strikes me because, well, look, I've known you to enjoy childish things,
Yeah.
or throughout, for 20 plus years, 30 plus years. But to, it's kind of reaffirming that sometimes the simple things in life are where we should take joy.
Oh, yeah. Eh, yeah, managing expectations is a big part of my lifestyle now. Like, I'm not starting the next big business. You know, I'm not solving the world's problems all that much. Uh, but uh, things I can do is I do enjoy teaching. I do enjoy sharing lessons learned. Um, and even if that's not actively teaching or lecturing, it's like just modeling. Um, and uh, speaking up when I should, and like, no, hey, I have an opinion on this. And if you think I agree, if you mistakenly think I agree with you, let me make sure you understand I do not. Things like that. Um, and I do like doing the craft stuff uh, is twofold for me. I genuinely enjoy it the same way. There is something about the simplicity of, hey, I have assembled something or created something or built something that had an identified endpoint successfully. And it's like, okay, project complete. Uh, to say nothing of, uh, I'm depending a lot on the neuroplasticity of what's left in my head to, okay, if I'm not going to be completely disabled by this, I need to continually be trying to do things, not avoiding doing things. That, like, okay, this is a little difficult for you. Fine. Try it. Maybe the synapses will find a way. That's a lot. It's a lot of the same therapy people who've had strokes end up going through, or concussion and TBI patients have, of, okay, there's two strategies. Hey, we can figure out how to adjust your lifestyle that you never have to do this anymore and you don't miss not being able to do it. Okay, that is a strategy. Uh, however, the problem doesn't get addressed then. Otherwise, like, oh no, hey, let's keep finding ways to, just like people who lift weights and do progressive resistance training. It's like, okay, let's keep trying to do the things that are difficult for you, and hopefully the computer will rewire itself and things will start working a bit better.
What 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 went on for you reconnecting with Elizabeth after the
Oh,
surgery?
uh, I married the right person.
Yeah.
It uh, what is, uh if I succumb to this disease, I'm not getting a divorce. I'm like, I'm not around for my wife and my family anymore, and I don't have any illusions. I think that's gonna be very, very difficult for them. And there's unfortunately not a lot I can do about that. So every time every time I dodge a bullet, uh, I am very, very relieved on their behalf. And I, a lot of this is beyond my control. So I don't have exactly guilt about being ill, but I do have a sense of responsibility about being ill. And I am acutely aware of the burden this puts on my wife. Um, I have, I've said this jokingly, but there's more truth to it than, I think I've got the better deal than she does on this. I really could not imagine I couldn't imagine if I was watching my spouse in this position, because I'm selfish, because I'd be like, "Wait a minute, my wife's gonna succumb to this? This is gonna be horrible for me." Uh, again, all the feels are on this one. They're
Yep.
like, wow, there is a lot going on here. Um, I feel wildly lucky that uh, Elizabeth and I did not have stuff in our marriage we have to fix or work out. It is quite a luxury. If you're going to be this challenged, it is a luxury to show up in a solid relationship. There's not silliness around the edges that needs to get sorted out. Like we both genuinely believe we're married to the correct person. Yeah, it's like, okay, cool. Um,
Do you think that so look, first of all, I want to apologize a little bit for asking that question because it's an incredibly personal, difficult question. But I want to at least mention that you and I talked about we should um,
yeah,
jump into the difficult questions. So um,
well, the
that
other thing, if it's not just going to be an exercise in me talking about myself, which is one of my favorite topics, uh, I l- there's there's a lot of ego in saying, "Hey, I'm going to sit down and talk about what I'm going through with my disease."
yeah,
Uh, I do expect there will be some people watching this, or I hope, they may not agree with everything I have to say. They may not have an experience that parallels mine, but there might be some comfort in, oh, wow, I've had these weird, complicated feelings about this, that, or the other thing
mm,
and been unhappy about it. And like, dude, do that. Yeah. um,
right.
yes.
Your feelings are valid.
Oh, yeah.
So on that topic, the second thing that I wanted to say is, do you think that this disease, the the process that you go through, and I want to stay on topic with this getting out of this first surgery, but that process somewhat simplifies the relationship in that even if you had more stuff to figure out that
Mhm.
was less central to, okay, our relationship, our relation, and I mean by that yours with Elizabeth. um do you think that it, it has the potential to simplify things or to complicate them, and how would you how would you handle that?
Well, the joke is, the healthy man has 1,000 problems. The sick person has one.
Mm,
You get real good at sorting
yep.
that, like, okay, this is not, I spend a lot of time looking at things and actively deciding I am not going to care about X a whole lot. It's like, uh, how the spoons are put away is never going to be a source of conflict. Even if there might be a fleeting, like, why would they not all be pointed in that direction? OCD has its place.
Yep.
We're going to keep that to ourselves. Um, that said, uh, if you're ill and there are things wrong in your life, if you're ill with the kind of illness that the clock is running out, uh, you may have a better, more fulfilling life if you make some conscious decisions about how and what you're going to address, particularly before you drag somebody else along on what's going to be a rough ride.
Mm,
I have some empathy for folks who realize they're facing lifespan shortening illness and they completely uproot things in their life, as chaotic as that may be. Um, I can't imagine that's easy. I can't imagine that's easy for anybody involved. There is an argument that, like, that may actually be the better move. Um, Now, keep in mind, I'm saying, like, hey, you're changing things in your life for everyone's benefit, not going full in on the cocaine and hookers in Vegas plan.
Yep.
Uh, but if there's anything, if you knew you were going to crash the car next week and be killed in an accident, have you given thought to how you would like today to look? That has become a very real mental exercise for me. That, like, okay, am I spending my time the way I want to today? Um, and I look around and I have acquaintances that are in failing relationships or failing professional circumstance, or just failing on the quality of the life they're living. That I'm like, hey, if I were you, you might really want to put some effort into trying to get things on a track. And perfect gets in the way of good. It's like, okay, doesn't need to be perfect, but are you
Right.
optimizing where you can?
Yep.
Sometimes much easier said than done. And I think we've talked about this before. I very much appreciate uh, the position of privilege I've arrived in this problem with, uh, because for I expect for 90% of the people who find out they have this illness, like, suddenly you're like, I can't work. I'm going to lose my house.
Mhm.
I don't have good insurance. The wheels are coming off. Uh, Really, just because I won the parent lottery, and I've had good fortune to have a real jobby job. Uh, you know, I'm not losing my house. Elizabeth's not going to lose the house. The kids, no one suddenly has to come back from college because we can't afford it anymore. Things like that. Uh, I I suspect that's not many people's experience when they find out they have serious illness.
Mhm.
Um, Particularly if they started out a little behind the curve. Like, the only problem I have is I have a dangerous illness. You know, I don't have a substance abuse problem,
Okay.
not mentally ill, go down the list.
I think that's um, I, I think that's stating it kindly because it's understating the impact of having a dangerous illness. And I so but that aside, um, what so you wake up from the surgery. You're reconnecting with people. What were the what were the negative? Because there were some negative things happening for you physically recovering after the first surgery.
Yeah, fortunately, nothing too onerous. The big deal is they've been scraping around in your head, so you're extremely high risk for stroke. And they're like, literally, the advice starts coming down to, like, hey, you really might want to think twice before bending over to tie your shoes so you don't pop something in your head and have a whole new problem. Um,
So to just explain that, the pressure in the
right,
blood vessels in your brain that they've just been scraping against. Um, it changes as you go up and down, and people who experience lightheadedness when they get up suddenly or whatever, they understand that. Bending down increases the pressure, which might pop a vessel, and so tying your shoe might not be that great an idea
right.
recovering from this.
Well, and they were a little challenged by me because I'm in the walk it off club. That I'm like, okay, start moving around, start walking.
Right.
Uh, a lot of ailments of 50-year-olds are cured by proper sleep and some modest movement. And it's like, okay, don't get off the couch. really does solve a lot of problems. Uh, a little a little frustrating for the nurses taking care of me when I'm like, "Hey, I'd like to go for a walk." And I'm like, "Yeah, I bet you do." No, you're just gonna sit still for a while. Um, which I just found frustrating because now, uh, eh, I was extremely motivated to prove to myself that, like, okay, I have not lost too much capacity from this. Um, and that continues to be a challenge for me that I bump up against, oh, I can't do this the way I used to. Can I push it and get most of it back? Um, that I found I found that very frustrating. Even though
Can
I
you or should
understood
you?
what's that?
Can you or should you push to get
Oh,
to
well, uh, I
you can,
can.
but should you?
No.
Right,
Generally,
right.
no. Um, uh, I really recommend if anyone who finds themselves in the position that, healthcare professionals are giving them guidance, step 1 is probably listen to the guidance given.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I did manage to hurt myself after my 2nd surgery, and this will all when we get into that story, that'll all make some sense. Uh, but just reconnecting, it was a lot of I had I was wonderfully aware of, okay, I have gone through an experience or they have given me a drug that has stopped me breathing on my own. I have been completely dependent on the life support machines. Uh, they have been rooting around. I've been teaching emergency medical care for a long time, and one of the boldface notes in the class is, "Okay, don't touch the computer." You know, if you can see brains, don't touch. And they went in and were touching it in a big way. Uh, and fortunately, very quickly, I was like, okay, I can't notice any particular deficit from what they've done. Um, and just try and take some joy in, oh, okay, I can match up the colors on the Legos. Uh, I did get a nice emotional bump because uh, so much of my crowd from work, my work environment is a tribe. Like these people are wildly committed and they all showed up to visit. Somewhat to the frustration of the hospital that they're like, okay, this is cool, two at a time. You cannot bring the whole squad in to hang out in his room.
Badging in is not a thing in the
Not so
in the
much.
in the
Oh yeah, and
ICU.
by the way, like yes, you may be a police officer of some sort. We're still not excited about the fact that you think it's perfectly normal to be walking around with all these guns.
Yeah.
There's no need for them here at the hospital. So, yes, we hope you're right. Um, uh, I ended up starting to take great joy that I would have friends show up to visit me in the hospital. Uh, and I was still wearing very much like this stuff. I was wearing one of the little sock hats covering up the staples going up the back of my head. And it was perfectly obvious I'd had brain surgery. And I'm sitting in a chair, chatting, carrying on. And like all of them are like, aren't you supposed to be messed up? And I'm like, well, I got the good version of this. No, I'm not terribly messed up. Now, when you stand over here, you disappear and I can't see you. But beyond that, I'm
See,
doing pretty well.
that's something that's interesting because you said you didn't have a deficit, but you did have a
Oh, yeah.
visual deficit. Like it was, I mean, that is back there is the part of the brain that deals with visual and visualization and that kind of stuff. That's where they're
The,
scooping out the melon.
yeah. Um, the deficit I'm most afraid of is when they do something that changes me.
Mm.
Um, yeah, like I did a lot of weird education and training, and like I have remember saying the words to an audience like, "Hey, if I step on a landmine and lose my foot, I'll be pissed, but I'll be fine." That's a certain kind of problem that like,
Hmm.
okay, particularly in this century is like, okay, you can overcome that. um, they scoop out the wrong thing in there, and suddenly my identity is different and my personality is different. I would have that is a completely different challenge to deal with. That I was talking to friends and it was clear like, okay, uh,
He
I
still
am
has this
still
weird sense of humor.
right. I am still me on this side of this, and like they're still seeing the same thing they're used to. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is cool. Um, and in fact, it would be inconvenient. I would accept being completely blind. If that was gonna make this go away, I wouldn't dig it, but okay, that would be. I would take that over. Hey, suddenly, I don't love people the same way anymore. I'm not. I don't deal with problems the same way anymore. If those are the two pathways available, I'm like, uh, those are the deficits I'm worried about. You
Yeah.
know, um, and I think it's the same fear. I think a lot of us, as we get into the second half or third quarter of the book, when we see loved ones starting to succumb to dementia and they start losing themselves, that fear becomes more acute. I always imagined that was going to be an 80s and 90s problem. When suddenly it's like, ooh, this might be a 5-year problem.
Yeah.
Like, I have anxiety about that. That I'm like, ooh, I don't want to be. I don't mind. I'm not going to mind having difficulty doing things and tasks requiring more time and more effort. That is a completely different problem than, oh, hey, you're not the same person. Your personality has changed. How you react to people has changed. Um, because those are the little deaths. They're like, oh, okay, this isn't. I think all of us have probably bumped into somebody who has who's changed from illness or life circumstance or something else so significantly
Mm.
that like this is not the person I became friends with. And there's no getting him back. And you're like, oh, um, I really don't want to go through that.
Well, and um uh, uh, I know Sir Jackie Stewart, the race car driver,
Okay.
and his wife Helen suffers from dementia, has suffered
Mm,
from dementia for a long time now, and um, y- mostly I think she's unaware of it at this point. But the family, it has created an entirely new person for the family and for their relationship and so on. And what you're talking about is there's two parts to this problem. There's the problem that you experience, but then there's the problem. I mean, you've talked earlier about how your problems are we problems in your family, which is a remarkable way of viewing those things. But I mean, these become problems for Elizabeth, for your kids, Will and Grace, and I just it's I think what you're acknowledging is twofold. One is the fear for yourself, but also this fear for them, your relationship with them, how that's all going to work out. That's a that's profound.
uh, well, and it's not unique. That's the human condition. Like a lot of families are going to deal with this.
You know what you just did? You and I do the same thing. It's not. I'm not. You. This is a very intensely personal issue for you,
Hmm.
and so you just took it and made it about other people. And you're not deflecting. It's not a deflection. It's you have this generosity. This is what I will tell people. You have a generosity about the way you view your problems. Your problems are in the scope of the human experience. And I I think it's I think it's generous of you because these are these are real problems for you.
Uh,
It's a coping mechanism, I know, as
well,
well as
well,
being generous.
deflection works very, very well.
Yeah.
Mm. Excuse me, just a little bit. Um,
Mm.
while we're sitting here, I'm having a little wave of symptom, which will take about a minute to resolve. There is an upside of having been dealing with this for a few months. It's like, oh, okay, I recognize this feeling. And fortunately, I'm not behind the wheel of a car at the moment.
Yep.
Ugh. Um, I've said before, fortunately, I have very little in the way of truly debilitating symptoms, but I do have these moments of being very uncomfortable with headache and things like that. And it ends up almost being a flavor of vertigo. And it's just like, okay, just ride it out for a second. And
I
generally
hope
it
it
passes.
I hope it's not anything I said.
No, not at all. Um, all right. So get me back on track now that I've lost the thread a little bit.
Well, what I was saying was that you took I'm describing a problem that is yours, and very generously you said, "Well, that's the human condition." And I'm like, "Wait, H, you know what you just did is you did what I mean, I think a lot of men do, but I think you in particular because you do have this generous, giving, and um, high level view of the way things work for people. You deflected and you said, this is rather than you don't feel sorry for yourself much, it seems, at least not on the
Oh, I certainly
outside.
have my moments.
Yeah.
Uh, again, what's been I've been lucky enough that my friends are high quality people and like they're kind of living by a similar script. And it's like, okay, let's be nice to other people. Let's appreciate their perspective of the world, things like that. Um, there is nothing inherently wrong with having some self pity and compassion for yourself when you find yourself in the wrong lifeboat. Uh, that said, that does need to be capped a little bit. That like, okay, I can acknowledge that this blows. You know, I'm not happy about what it's doing to me. I'm not happy about what it's doing to my family. Uh, but after that, it's kind of like, all right, is there a make the best of this strategy? Um, you know, I've told you the story about the handful of choices you have when you find out you're ill.
Mm, say it again.
Uh, I had the first world problem of I got to choose my care, which was a huge privilege. So I could choose my care. You know, was I going to get care? Was that care going to look like? And then the other one is I got to choose my attitude about it. Um, and choosing an attitude that was not, uh, you know, sunshine, rainbow, and flowers, that everything's fine, because frankly, almost nothing is fine. But given the choice of trying to lean into some joy and grace, as opposed to be overcome by anger and self pity and declaring, uh, the position that, hey, this is not fair. I did not deserve this. That's really appealing because it is true. It's like, no, no, I didn't do anything to deserve this.
Hmm.
Uh, that's really not how it works. It's like that's why we keep talking about struck by lightning. It's like, hey, bad things happen. But, unfortunately, that is also the human condition. And like, I can't blame myself for decisions made. I can't blame, somebody else for causing the accident. It's just like, no, hey, you got dealt these cards. Uh, let's try and have some grace about it. And again, getting back to the test of, hey, if you have X amount of time, how do you want to spend your time now? Um, I'd actually kind of like to be good company and pleasant and, smile and laugh with people. That would be a good thing. And yes, I will use every trick in the book to make myself feel better. Okay, I will deflect that. Like, yes, a lot of people are in this lifeboat. My lifeboat actually has some very nice upholstery. Things like
Right.
that.
Well, it's something you do, but it sort of works.
Oh yeah. Um, did you see the interview with the young lady who was the Olympic skier who talked about very very articulate, very accomplished young athlete, and it's a notable meme because the reporter starts female reporter speaking to a female athlete. And she starts it with, "This question is not meant to be rude."
Oh, yeah. She's an ice skater. Yes, yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
and then goes on to, "Do you think before you speak?" Mostly because this athlete has made a name for herself for being extremely articulate on the fly and saying some pretty insightful things. And, she has a pretty coherent theory of how she is self-coaching herself on who she is going to be by journaling and just writing all these reinforcing like, "Hey, I'm affirmatively choosing to be X." Um, and to be fair, some of it is probably performance, but performance does become reality. And if nothing else, she seems like a perfectly lovely and successful young athlete that I'm like, okay, there's something to be learned from this young lady. Um,
How
and we go back to you were asking, we were talking about being terrified on the surgical table and me pulling out some tricks of literally just how I was choosing to breathe.
Mm.
Um, there is a place for like, hey, let's embrace these things in your life as much as you can, that you have these things available to you when you need them.
how did how long did it take before you were able to sort of get into back into sort of life out of the hospital?
So I only had about 2 weeks of recuperation. Um, so I had had the first seizure of my life, which immediately puts a lot of restrictions on you. Uh, Mostly
No
because
driving, no.
yeah, they just don't want you doing activities that like, hey, being unconscious will be lethal.
Right?
It's like I don't go in the pool and I don't swim without a lifeguard. And the water is an environment I am wildly comfortable in, but like I do pay attention to like, hey, water's lethal. You cannot inhale this stuff.
Not good for
uh,
your health.
no, it's like, and there's mostly because I was a seizure risk. There were built-in left and right barriers to, okay, you're not going to be back to normal, even if you think you are. It's like, just
Mhm.
don't engage in normal activity. Um, but fortunately, I didn't have a lot of restriction on, okay, hey, you can walk, you can do moderate exercise. Uh, I didn't have a cognitive hit. So largely, I had a little trouble reading just because of my vision, but I could read. Uh, I could understand conversation and hang with things and still figure stuff out. It's like, okay, everything's working pretty fine. Um, and actually, was extremely motivated trying to be like, "Okay, I'm gonna minimize the impact this has on me," um, and started doing a ton of do-it-yourself occupational and physical therapy, just playing with reflex games, anything I could do to prove to myself, "Okay, I'm not as messed up as I might be otherwise." Um
And it's helping with that neuroplasticity.
Right, right, and basically, the analogy is like, "Hey, I had a stroke. How am I gonna get back to normal as quickly as I can?"
Mhm.
As I keep doing this stuff. What's been interesting about that has been hard for me to keep up, um, particularly as I start performing worse on these activities that I'm doing to try and re-script stuff, because frankly, it just gets depressing. I'll go do something I used to be good at, and I'll be terrible at it. Um, yeah, that's how you keep getting better is you keep doing the things you're terrible at. Sometimes a little tough to find it in the cup.
Right, right.
There's only so much negative feedback I want in a day.
Well, and I'm and I believe that Elizabeth made you pack away the circular saw.
Yeah. So, well, funny you should. There is. I have a lot of arguably dangerous hobbies. Uh, I have. I have a great friend, Mark Idicovici, is a woodworking enthusiast. Interesting enough, he's also a bomb technician, and he's a bomb technician who has 9 fingers instead of 10, which is never a great endorsement for a bomb technician. But he is quick to point out that he did not lose his finger from a bomb mishap. He lost his finger from his table saw.
Mm.
And Mark absolutely knows exactly what he's doing. He did not lose his finger out of any stupidity or inattention or anything else. He lost his finger just to the inherent danger of playing with high speed metal. Uh, I am really cautious on all of my dangerous hobbies. That's like, do I need to be doing this? And I've gotten very sensitive to as soon as there's an inkling of the fuckets in any activity, it's like, oh, that means stop doing this.
Yep.
Um, I'm a firearms enthusiast. I'm a firearms instructor. I'm certainly not the most proficient shooter you're going to deal with, but I shoot at a very high level, particularly for the job I had. Uh, yeah, that's kind of gone. It's like, yeah, I don't need to be messing with the firearms a whole lot. There's just way too much opportunity for mishap there. That's like, okay, as much as I like it, as much as still gives me my cool guy t-shirts. It's like, yeah, that's really not going to be on the list. Um, Sort of the point where like I've started selling my woodworking tools. Uh, and I'm kind of looking at the collection of work tools, the firearms I have, and I'm like, you know what? There's probably not a whole lot of reason for me to have these. It's just like there's not they may not have a place in my life anymore. I'm kind of holding on to them like some of my certifications and merit badges that like, well, in a year, you know, perhaps this medicine will live up to the marketing and I'll be reevaluating what I can do. Uh, but realistically, it's like, yeah. Um, it was kind of fun. Like I sold off all my scuba gear. I was like, okay, that's an activity I am never going to do again.
Mhm.
But yeah, so Elizabeth's pretty good about reminding me there are things I should and should not be doing. A lot of activities have a little mental math of, okay, is this risk to me or risk to others? I will accept risk to me very differently. Like, hey, am I being irresponsible and endangering others by doing this? And I try very hard not to put myself in that position because, like, that'd just be unforgivable. Like I'm a believer that most accidents you could see coming. It's like, hey, this guy shouldn't have been doing X. Right. Don't do X.
Um, we've talked for an hour. I do you do you think that determination that you brought that you wanted to do these various things, and that's a significant part of recovery of leading a normal life
It's
ish,
yeah,
normal-ish life.
normal-ish life. I have, fortunately, even with illness, even with serious illness, I have a very complete life. Like this, I'm living a much richer life than many people who have, quote unquote, nothing going wrong. You know, now a lot of that is secondary to good fortune. Circumstance goes my way.
But
But a
also secondary to being intentional about it, and
well,
because you can either lay on the couch or be
oh, yeah.
intentional.
No, I have an excuse. There is a version of things that I don't think a whole lot of people would give me a lot of grief for completely checking out and going like, "Yep, my turn's over," or I am gonna go with I'm gonna embrace my misery and the misfortune of things. Um, that is quite frankly, that is not what I want my legacy to be. You know, it's really just that simple.
Yeah.
I want my wife, my family, my kids, my friends to remember something very different of me. Um, and then there's the other thing. It's like, hey, I y you know, I it is easy to start assuming my horizon is 3 or 4 years out. Uh, there's another patient at the institution I go to. They've been succeeding with this for 8 years now. It's like it's a little easy to suddenly be like, "Hey, it's hopeless. The clock's running out." It's like, okay, the clock is running. You don't know how fast the clock is running. Let's not paint yourself into too many corners.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, you do need to keep a place where you're like, hey, before you think that 10 years is something you're never going to see, uh, it's like, no, let's leave that. So it's kind of interesting as we're talking here. Um, I suffer from migraines now, and I get a visual aura, which is kind of a cue that it's coming on. And I have one of the medications called Imitrex that if I take it now, when I've got this visual disturbance, it may actually work pretty well. Do you mind if we pause?
Yeah, I think this is a good time, and I think it's obviously a good moment for people to understand that as articulate as you can be, things that the machine can come to a grinding stop. So hey,
I'm getting
let's
better
leave it
at accepting that.
yeah, let's leave it here for today.